Runners Only with Dom Harvey.
Runners Only with Dom Harvey and Guyon Espiner. G'day, mate. Welcome.
Oh, thank you very much. Great setup here. It's good to be here.
Oh, hey, thank you very much. This is probably, this is just in a spare room in my apartment, but I was thinking it's probably flashier than the Radio New Zealand studio.
It's well flashy. We don't have ceiling fans for a start, let alone mics that look like this.
Yeah. Now, a lot of people will be like, I've never heard of Guyon Espiner before. There's a lot of people that'll be listening that'll be like fizzing to get to see another side of you, I'd imagine. But for anyone that doesn't know, Guyon Espiner, like a journalism legend in New Zealand, worked for Sunday Star Times for a number of years, Q&A, breakfast, 60 Minutes, Radio New Zealand, host of Morning Report for a number of years, and a reputation as a tough interviewer.
Oh, there's a bit of that. I'm on the receiving end today, though, aren't I?
How do you? I wanted to ask, how do you find that? Because you and I are very similar in the respects of our age, our love of running, and we're both from a radio background, although very, very different arms of radio. I'm from music radio, where it was basically a career built on fart jokes, and you're from a more serious side where you were holding politicians to task. But how do you? I hate being on the receiving end. I feel incredibly uncomfortable and exposed and vulnerable.
Yeah, I don't mind being interviewed, and you know, we're talking about some of my favourite subjects today, running and myself. So you know, I'm feeling pretty good, mate.
No. But I suppose like what I mean is like I suppose. The side of radio I came from, in order to make a connection with the audience, it was important that you gave more of yourself away so they felt like they know you. Whereas yours is almost completely different, to the point where you put a tweet or a Facebook status update out a few years ago talking about your type 1 diabetes diagnosis, and it was very, very stoic. It was sort of like, I don't want to make a big deal about this, and I just want to move on, but I'm away because I've got diabetes. It almost felt like that was oversharing for you. Yeah,
that's an interesting thing. I'd forgotten about putting that out back in the day. It's been about 4 years since I was diagnosed with type 1 diabetes. Yeah, I guess at RNZ there is a tendency to be a bit more sort of austere about those things. I used to sort of joke that you weren't allowed to give your opinion about whether you're a Vegemite or a Marmite fan, and you can go over the top with this sort of objectivity stuff. And I think that's loosening away. I think in the modern era there is just more and more that you have to share. People expect to and should get a sense of who you are and where you're coming from. I think this idea that you are somehow above everything is old fashioned and just wrong. So. Yeah, no, I'm happy to talk about most elements of my life.
Yeah, most elements. Interesting.
Yeah, well, any of them really. I'll throw that gauntlet down. I'm pretty much happy to talk about everything. Although I did qualify that again, didn't I? I must have been talking to those politicians too long. Always leaving myself a bit of a door open. I could
a little out clause. So the podcast is called Runners Only with Dom Harvey, and I know that you've got a relationship with running, and it's been there. You're a non-drinker now. You gave up drinking a few years ago. You've got a book about that called The Drinking Game, which we'll get into. But running's always been a part of, even when you were drinking, it was always part of your life.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
Where did it start?
About 2003. So
your early 30s?
Yeah, I'd broken up from a long-term relationship. I'd been with this girl for like 12 years, and my mother had just recently died, and so I was living alone. I had a lot of time on my hands. Corin Dan, who you might know from Morning Report on XTVNZ, said, why don't you run around the bays in Wellington? It's about 7 Ks, and I thought, I could give this a shot, and really enjoyed it. And then I got into running half marathons, and then full marathons. Rotorua 05 I think was my first marathon, and I did 19 full competitive marathons, including some ultras and stuff over the years, and I'm still running half marathons today. It's half the distance, but I run 5 times a week, just 10 Ks a shot, you know, so I run most days, and got the Waterfront Marathon coming up in April. So
amazing. Is that the half marathon?
Yeah,
right, all flat and fast
apparently.
Are you like goal fixated when it comes to times and things, or not so much?
I've sort of reset the clock a bit after getting type 1 diabetes, because it's a bit of a chemistry experiment every day with this condition, and running is both a really good means to help control it, but also presents its own challenges. So I'm sort of allowing myself a personal best post-diabetes time. So I've reset the clock on it.
What were your I don't really like getting into times with people on this, because I find it's intensely personal.
I'm happy to talk about times, and I'll never forget them. I managed 129 twice before type 1. I did the Auckland half last year. Yeah, it was last year, wasn't it? Like October, was it? In 1:45, which I was pretty happy with at 51.
Like 5-minute K pace. That's good.
Yeah, it's all right, eh?
Yeah,
It's it's not going to challenge the Olympic squad. But,
Kipchoge's not going to be quaking in his boots.
no, that's right.
So the type 1 diabetes, what does that mean exactly?
Yeah, so we're insulin-dependent diabetics. So you got two types of diabetes. Type 2 is the most common one, and it's really a disease of obesity, right? And we've got an epidemic of it in New Zealand. Type 1 is an autoimmune disease, and you wake up one day and you realise that your pancreas isn't producing any insulin. So we need to inject insulin to stay alive. We need to do that about 5 times a day. And we need to keep our blood sugars within a certain sort of range, otherwise you're going to get complications. So, look, it's completely manageable in that you can do every other aspect of your life. You're not allowed to fly commercially, you're not allowed to dive, you're not allowed to join the military, none of which I want to do, none of which I'd be any good at. So it hasn't really interfered too much with my life. I still run, I still enjoy my life, and as I say, if you manage it well, you can live a good life. But it is a bit of a challenge.
Yeah, 5 times a day. That's intense.
Yeah, it is.
I suppose it's lucky you're a grown man when you got it, so you're more like emotionally equipped to deal with it, I guess.
I think that's a very good point. I mean, most commonly they used to call it juvenile onset diabetes, and the most common age of onset is about 7 years old. It is mainly comes on in childhood for most people, and shit, that'd be hard, because you want to eat Malipus and eat jelly beans and stuff, and high sugar diet's pretty much out. So I'm pretty much a keto diet guy now, pretty much sugar free. Along with alcohol free, so there's a few things I've given up in recent years.
Well, actually, I sent you a text just earlier saying, do you want a coffee on arrival? And your exact wording was something like, a long black is my poison, which is interesting phrasing because, alcohol is a poison, and it's a saying that people use.
Yeah, that's right, and that's what you used to say, isn't it? Oh, what's your poison?
Yeah,
and it is a poison. But we've learned to process it over the years, and I do get into some of that in the book.
Yeah. So your decision to give up alcohol, was it anything to do with like the sugar quantity in wine and the diabetes? Or
no, it wasn't.
No.
I kept drinking for about a year, pretty hard out after I had diagnosed with type 1, and so there's a weird connection though in that. Quite early when I got the type 1 diagnosis, I decided to go down the sugar-free path, which is effectively, people would know it as a keto diet, but it means avoiding all sorts of breads, rice, most processed foods, right? So I cut out sugar completely. So when about a year later I woke up with another hangover on a Sunday morning and said to myself, this is it, I'm stopping drinking right now, I knew that I had the power to do that because I'd given up sugar, which is no easy feat. It's not just talking about sugar as we associate it, and we're talking about all carbohydrates. So quite doable, but quite a big change. And so knowing that I had the discipline to do that and to make a decision and stick to it, I think helped me. And I just did decide that Sunday morning to stop drinking and didn't go to any, AA or anything like that. Not that I'm dissing those things. No, I mean, that's all cool. And people have heaps of different types of issues with alcohol. It's a pretty rich tapestry in terms of what issues people face. But I did know in my head that I had the power and discipline to stop doing that. And I think the adjustments to diet after diabetes gave me the feeling that I had the strength to do it.
So what was the moment like that? You said you woke up on a Sunday morning with a hangover and just decided that was enough. So there was no rock bottom moment. There was no incident. Was it boredom?
No, it was more the fact that I never had the off switch with alcohol. And I never did from the age of about 14 or 15. And I'm like a lot of Kiwi guys, so I was born in 1970, so the mid-80s where we started drinking at 14, 15, and we get drunk every weekend. and I did that till my late 40s. Right. And every weekend. Some people sort of grow out of it after university. I'd always get drunk on the weekend. That's what you did, unless I had a marathon the next day. So 2 times a year I wouldn't get drunk on a weekend, And the price of the wine went up over the years, and you thought you were more sophisticated possibly, but the patterns that had been set and trained in those mid-teenage years didn't change. And when I say I woke up with a hangover, it's probably a little more than that. I woke up again having forgotten what happened the night before. And man, I did that so many times, So I never did anything crazy like, I crashed a car or, had that sort of movie style rock bottom moment. I just had probably hundreds of times in my drinking career where I couldn't tell you what happened after 9 o'clock at night. And it was, and that Sunday morning was the same. It was a dinner party, a few people over. My wife at the time said that I hadn't done anything too silly or said anything too bad. But I was just like, again, I had blackouts, which sounds scary, but a lot of people have them. A lot of drinkers you talk to go, oh, no, I don't have blackouts. But they don't remember what they told you the night before. So they have got parts of it missing. And I just thought, man, I've given up excuses for myself and strategies to mitigate it. I went to all these, look, I'll just try drinking lower alcohol beer till 9 o'clock and then I'll go on the beers, or I'll cut out red wine because that's
heavier. Yeah,
none of these strategies worked for 35 years. And so I just had to realise that I'm someone who alcohol doesn't suit me. You know, and it took me a long time to realise.
I don't know if you had a 30-year career in it. I think it suited you very well.
I had some moments. And I had some great times with it. And this is the thing in the book. This is not a preachy book about don't drink alcohol and the evils of alcohol. That's why it's hard, because it's so great too, right? I had some amazing moments with alcohol. It's so entrenched and ingrained in just about everything we do. This is why I wanted to have a look at it, because it's so woven into the fabric of our lives. Of course it's not. If it was just evil, if it had the reputation of pee, it'd be very different. It'd be black and white. But it's not.
It doesn't have that stigma.
It doesn't. And that's why I thought, and people do think, oh, look, I can keep going. All my mates do it. Oh, I walk outside and I see the ad for it. Oh, it's time. It's wine o'clock now. Do you want to catch up for a beer? Hey, nice to meet you, mate. It's all in that culture. So you kind of feel, shit, I'm an outlier. I'm weird if I don't drink. And you do get made to feel like that when you don't drink. And this is why I wanted to have a look at it. Not because it's evil. In fact, almost the opposite. Because it's so entrenched in our lives that I thought it's really worth. You almost do need to pull back, and that's what you do when you don't drink. You realise, shit, this is really full on. This is a big part of our lives.
Yeah, actually, it's a really good book. So you intertwine some of your personal stories and experiences along with just laying out the facts. And the liquor industry, it really does get an alarming free pass, doesn't it?
Oh, it amazingly does. I mean, it's the only industry that doesn't have to tell you what's in their product apart from the alcohol. Like, there's no calorie warnings. There's no, there are warnings coming in for drinking while pregnant. There's no cancer warning. Imagine the tobacco companies getting away with that. I mean, the evidence that's emerging now is that there is pretty strong links with different types of cancer. Not for small amounts of alcohol, but there is a real link there. And so the regulation on the alcohol industry they must be laughing all the way to the bank.
Well, your journey sounds very, very similar to mine. So I'm a few years younger than you. I'm still drinking, but I feel like I'm almost at that crossroads in life where I've been reading a lot about it, listening to some Dr. Andrew Huberman and reading your book and some other literature, and I'm almost ready to, break up with it. But I'm still experimenting with that thing that you talked about before that doesn't work, like not drinking Monday to Thursday, or not drinking when I'm home alone, just when I'm with other people. And also, like you, I'm a very, very good drinker. Like, I don't turn obnoxious. I don't make an absolute ass of myself. I'm not violent.
So can I ask you a question?
Yeah, absolutely.
So why would you stop drinking then? What worries you about it?
I'm worried about the health effects.
Yeah, okay, yeah.
Yeah, like I can easily get through like a bottle of wine, like no trouble. I'd never drive after it. I just never drive or do anything foolish like that, but I don't feel like drunk after it. Do you know what I mean?
I do, yeah, because you build up the tolerance over the years. I was going to say, like, if you enjoy it and you are able to moderate it, I'd still be drinking if I could do that. I would be. And I don't certainly make any judgments about people who do continue to do so. I also did. I wanted people to know, though, that you can live a good life without alcohol, because it seems such a major thing to do in this country. But I think we are changing to some degree. But I don't know, like, we are similar ages. I mean, if you go back to your high school sort of years, I mean, it's pretty weird for someone not to drink, eh?
Oh, completely weird. And
could you even have made it through?
I don't think so. I think it's easy. Actually, I had David Seymour on the podcast a couple of weeks ago, and he had a couple of years of sobriety just before the recent election. And so this is like 4 or 5 years ago, whatever. And he said he'd go to a bar and ask for a non-alcoholic drink. And he said the bartender would look at you like he's got a penis like growing out of his ear.
The same thing happens to me at times.
It's better now, though, eh? It's a bit
better now, but sometimes you can go into a place and they'll roll their eyes when you ask for a Diet Coke. which is really weird. Or I have friends who say,
your eyes,
yeah, I've had that. And it's like, well, you're wasting your time. Why are you in a bar? See, I love going to bars still. I love pubs. I've worked in pubs. I love pubs. And some people say, oh, do you still go out? What do you mean? You know what? Am I supposed to stay at home now that I don't drink alcohol?
But you wouldn't stay out as late, would you?
I go out to gigs. I love it.
Yeah.
I love going to music and going out to gigs. Yeah. You don't do the 4 a.m. nights. No, you don't. But you easily
nothing good happens after sort of midnight
well,
anyway, does it?
that's the thing. And so, yeah, I mean, I'm really enjoying going out and I love socialising. And the idea that you have to have alcohol to do that just isn't true. And that's a big part of where the advertising and the culture of it comes into it, which is so ingrained. And I get into that stuff too.
Yeah, it's hard for I think men actually just people our age, because we were swimming in the same sort of waters in the 1990s, and that's when it was a badge of honour if someone could hold their piss.
Absolutely, and it's amazing the free pass and what people would just write off to alcohol. I mean, yeah. I never talk about other people's drinking because I think that's their story. But Jesus, you should have seen some of the nights at Parliament, some of those parties, some of the people that you would know well, the states that they ended up in, and the things that people said. I mean, just unbelievable. You get away with it because it's just, oh well, you know, it's you know, it happens on tour, stays on tour, sort of stuff. I mean, it's quite amazing.
Oh, you say you never talk about anyone in those parliamentary circles, but you're working the same time as Patrick Gower, I guess, who's now alcohol free. Surely you can share stories about him.
Yeah, I mean, me and Paddy were in the gallery together. I've probably got to know Paddy a bit better over the years after the gallery, and it was more me and Duncan Garner, who was his boss at the time, and I do tell a story about drinking with John Key, Duncan and I going out for a night with John Key just before he became Prime Minister and having a big night with him, and I get into that in the book because a lot of the socialising, a lot of the contact building, a lot of the relationships were built around alcohol. We had 3.2, which was the third floor of the Beehive. That was the pub. And yeah, you'd go in there, it'd be, you know, Winston would be at the bar, you know, people would be smoking cigars and drinking lots of alcohol, and those were how relationships were formed. That's how business was done. And it would have been, we were talking just before about, could you have made it through high school? And I don't reckon you could have been a popular kid. Not in my day, no way. You know, basically there were two excuses for not drinking. One was being pregnant. I can't remember what the other one was, but you know, it's certainly none of them applied to me, and it would have been seriously held back in terms of relationship building when I was at Parliament without the drinking.
So you've had nights on the piss with Winston? Winston's notorious, right? Loves it. Loves his. Yeah. What does he drink? Is he Scotch, whiskey?
Yeah.
Everything. What?
Yeah. He doesn't drink beer.
Not a beer man.
No, he doesn't drink beer. He drinks wine and whiskey. Yeah, wine and whiskey would be his main.
Does he still smoke?
He's been photographed with the odd durry every now and again. The last campaign, but he's one of those guys who just seems to keep rolling. I don't know. I think your 50s is sort of like Sniper Alley, where stuff can go wrong. If you get out the other side of that, and he'd be 75 now. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised to see him in triple figures. You know?
Yeah.
He'll run a few more times yet. I don't think you'll get him to. I don't think you'll get him to read my book. We've had our moments, me and Winston. I don't think you'll get him to give up drinking. But maybe.
Seems like everyone that works in that sort of environment has had their moments with Winston Peters. So there's no love lost between you?
Look, you know, it's one of those, I think they call it symbiosis in biology, don't they? It's one of those relationships with him and the media. He pretends he hates the media but loves it and couldn't live without it. And the media pretends they hate Winston and couldn't live without him.
Right. But he's quite a likeable guy generally.
Oh, yeah. I mean, his smile's pretty unparalleled, isn't it? Like he can give you a full blast and then give you the...
A little wink at the end.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. And he's a master politician, let's face it.
So you did morning radio for 5 years, 4 a.m. starts.
Yeah, I did, yeah.
So how did you manage that and your drinking? Were you not drinking the night before?
Almost all the time, yes. I wasn't drinking the night before. I call myself in the book a disciplined alcoholic, and it's quite funny because you kind of can do that. And you were talking a bit about your drinking patterns. Even in my biggest drinking days in the gallery, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday night would be alcohol-free nights. Wednesday morning, never in the morning. Wednesday after work, you'd be into it. You know, it'd be a 6 pints, half a bottle of wine sort of night, and then it would escalate there Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and then you start the thing again. So, yeah, it's interesting the signals and mindset around this because there's a perception that Oh, look, I'm not addicted to alcohol. I just went 3 days without it. Well, I went 3 days every week, just about every week of my drinking career without it. But to do a week without it, or a Friday night and Saturday night, I would never do that.
Yeah, right.
So, but yeah, I mean, with morning radio, almost always swear off the grog, but that would just mean that on the weekends we're bigger and bigger.
Make up for lost time. Yeah. So you did a show called Morning Report on Radio New Zealand, which is it's like the government. So you play no ads. It's the government station, right?
It's public. It's publicly
right.
owned. I do bristle a little bit at the government station, but I know what you mean. But you're right in the sense that it's owned by the public, it's owned by you and I, and we pay the taxes. So, but it's it's commercial free. Fairly sort of serious sort of show, and there's not a lot of fart jokes on it. But although some of the responses from politicians sound a little similar.
Yeah, right. So you replaced a guy called Jeff Robinson, who'd been doing that role for 39 years.
Yeah, that's right.
So what year was that you started?
2014.
Okay, so social media was a thing. It wasn't what it is now, but it was still a thing. How was that? You must have been...
you get smashed.
You must have been hammered.
You get smashed on Twitter.
Yeah.
Every time you attack someone, especially from the left, because I'm a pretty equal opportunities basher. I'd bash the right and bash the left. I'm pretty, I don't have any qualms either way. But did find that if you got stuck into a politician from the left side of the train tracks, Twitter would come down on you like a ton of bricks, because it is pretty slanted in that sense. I've pretty much sworn off Twitter nowadays. I don't know about you, but the social...
It's very negative. Yeah,
social media is so negative.
Yeah.
Instagram's a bit more positive, but it's mainly sort of women telling other women how beautiful they are, so it doesn't really hold a lot of appeal. Many of whom are, but I've sort of sworn off the social media.
So was that hard for you, like replacing this guy that was doing the job for 39 years, or were you able to sort of see it for what it is and laugh it off?
Yeah, I mean, I think I went in there trying to shake things up a bit, and I think we did do that. He had a massive legacy and following, so they were big shoes to fill in that respect. But everyone takes their own thing into a new job, and the media landscape was changing quickly then. It's changing quickly now, but and RNZ needs to move and has moved. That was quite strange coming in after someone had been there so long.
Yeah, absolutely. So also that merger thing with RNZ and TVNZ, is that off the table now?
That's gone now. That's gone.
What were your thoughts on that?
I was quite keen to get on my mitts on their kit. Like I'm a doco maker too. I've made what brings us here today really is a documentary called Proof that I made a couple of years ago, which was about the drinking story in the liquor industry. And then after that screened on TVNZ in November 2021, Alan and Unwin rang up and said, hey, would you do a book on this? And so here we are now. So I've made a couple of documentaries that have screened on TVNZ, but we've made them on very limited resources at RNZ. So I was pretty keen to migrate across the road into more pleasant surroundings and get my mitts on their kit. So that's a bit disappointing in terms of the opportunities it presents. But it's off the table for now.
Yeah. So you would have got the chance to make documentaries with cameras rather than just shooting on your phone.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. I have to throw out the old iPhone 6.
Yeah. Hey, by the way, it's a great documentary and it's still available on YouTube if anyone wants to watch it. You sort of introduced Māori to Radio New Zealand.
Well, that's probably it's funny you say that because I kind of and you touched on it before about how. Yeah, I kind of considered myself this heavy-hitting political interviewer and stuff, and I thought when I went in to do Morning Report that's what I'd be remembered for, and I'm going to give this death for 5 years and then see how we go. and the only thing that people, not the only thing, but one of the major thing that people talk to me about is te reo Māori on the radio, and it had a big impact. It's kind of weird looking back on it now because it was 2017, and I married a Māori woman. We've got our daughter's Māori. She's at a full Rumaki school, so she speaks Māori at school. And I wanted to give her language, so I better learn it and then take it from there. And as I was learning it, I thought, well, I'll fling this out on the radio too. It's an official language of New Zealand. It's a beautiful language. I'm learning it. Let's flick it around. And it was all kind of there wasn't a program. Like people think, oh, is RNZ social engineering or something? It wasn't that at all. It was just me flinging it around. Others were doing it. I took it a bit further and thought, no, this is cool. I'm going to run with this.
So you were just doing like a couple of extra words here and there, which is everywhere nowadays.
Initially, yeah, and then we went as I learned more and more. By the time I'd finished, we did full interviews in Māori, but we'd translate at the same time. So you'd fling a line out and then you'd translate it and use both the languages. So yeah, as I got better at it, and I'm still no expert by any means, I'm an intermediate sort of speaker, but as I got better, I'd try and share what I was learning. But listening now, yeah, it's everywhere, which is really cool.
Yeah, it's on the 6:00 news at the beginning of the sports bulletin. The beginning, it's everywhere. And I suppose you not that you're going to give yourself a pat on the back, but you deserve some of the credit for that, I guess, being a trailblazer in a way.
We did. We were early runners on it. I think it's hard to deny that. Yeah.
So no one in management tried to stop you? You just sort of opened the mic and...
There was a few... I think there was a few knee wobbling moments because you got a lot of feedback piling in, and at one point Don Brash got really upset about it, as he does. I respect Don Brash on the economy. I don't respect his views a lot on Māori issues, but that's his thing, and he's entitled to his opinion. I'm a big believer in free speech. He smashed into me, and people were starting to put press releases out, and there were lots of op-eds and stuff. There was quite a reaction, and it wasn't overwhelmingly positive. It's only 2017, but it's not long ago. But there was a lot of negative reaction too, and I think there were some who were starting to waver a little bit, but they never said, look, stop doing it or anything like that. And then after a while, they started to encourage it. And nowadays we've got, training, there's training sessions, there's all that sort of stuff all behind it now. And there's a bit more of an organised program, whereas I was just sort of kind of flinging it around quite a lot.
It's not a bad legacy though, is it?
No, it's not. And I'm actually quite proud of it. I am. Yeah.
Oh, that's cool. You mentioned before something about your mum. You lost your mum at a relatively early age, I guess, like 30-ish?
Yeah, that's right, there? Early 30s. She died at 68 of cancer effectively. She had a bad cancer, and then she had heart issues as well. And so she died in 2001. So, yeah, more than 30 years ago now.
Wow. How was that? How was that at that age and stage of life?
Yeah,
pretty. Still quite. Even though you're a man, it's still quite a young age to lose your mum.
It's a good point, and I think that's right. And that's where the running started in, man.
Is it?
And I'd be running. I remember, and it's a funny thing with running. I don't know whether you get this. I remember, sometimes I'd run 40 Ks plus, and I'd just start crying after in the 30s, mid-30s Ks, and it's just like you just start crying, and it's like where it had come from. It must be something chemical in your brain which starts to release stuff like that. And so
it's not because you were thinking of anything in particular.
It's just like it was just
broke your walls down. Somehow.
Yeah, and it's great thinking time, and I got quite zen-like about running, and that's still why I run. I run for my head rather than my heart. And still do that. And I find it's I find I work through a lot of problems, even like, barriers to a story I'm writing, or like, I could do it this way. And emotional stuff. So, I think it's a really good thing for mental health. But it was a big part of why I started running long distance. Big part of it.
Yeah, so she missed most of your career.
Never saw me on
stuff.
telly, which Mum would have loved, Yeah, so I was still a newspaper guy when she died. And she would have been pretty stoked about that, because I joined TVNZ in 2003, late 03, so she never saw that.
Is your dad still around?
My dad is. He's 89 this year, and he's still working, and he's still tramping, and he's still cycling. I think he's finally sort of given up drinking. He does a little bit of drinking. He's always been a guy of real discipline over the years. But hey, yeah, he's still going strong. So hopefully get some of those genes.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, I don't know if you want to talk about this, but there was something when I googled you yesterday. There was like a story online about you being on Bumble.
Yeah, no, happy to talk about anything.
What happened? Have you recently gone through a relationship breakup?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, no, I did. I separated with my wife in October of last year, so October of 2020. 2022. Just lost a couple of years.
How did you not end up? How did you get through that without falling back on alcohol? I think that says a lot about.
Well, I think that's a really good question. We were married 10 years, and we were together 12 years, so it was a big relationship. Got a daughter together, and on the critical afternoon, which I'll never forget, I was just about to go out for a run, and then we'd finally sort of decided, and the first thought was, I'm going to go to the pub and smoke durries as well. Because the cigarettes used to come out after about the fifth or sixth pint. Right, I don't know what you're like, but I was like a non-smoker until the fifth or sixth pint.
Social smoker they call it.
Yeah, social smoker. But the thing is if you only do that when you're drinking and you drink a lot, then effectively you're a smoker. Yeah. And that was just the first thought that went through my head, because that was always the escape to place. I always thought, I'll be all right as long as I can go to the pub. And then about 10 minutes later, I laced up my running shoes and went for a 10k run instead. And then I knew that I would never go back there. I always thought when I gave up drinking, gee, if a big crisis happens, and I'd put divorce as a big crisis.
Absolutely, it's one of the biggest life crises you can go through.
Yeah, and it's still fairly relatively raw as I sit here today, because it's only been a few months, but I haven't. And I haven't needed to, and I haven't felt like doing that, apart from that first flash of, gee, I know where my brain's going to go. It's going to go to the bottle, but it didn't. And I feel that's a pretty good stress test.
Yeah,
and
that's something to be proud of.
And I don't miss it. As it's not an option. It's just I don't miss it. I love being around people drinking. I buy wine for people. I always have wine in the house and beer in the fridge for mates when they come around. So it's not like yeah,
that's good. And I don't want to mock anyone, but I think that'd be the worst of non-drinker. It's like, oh, Guyon's coming over. We better hide all the alcohol. Yeah. No one else can drink because he's not.
It's funny you say that, because that's the hardest thing, mate. Yeah. The hardest thing about giving up drinking, in my experience, is not the fact that you can't have it at 5 o'clock in the afternoon or whatever your ritual is. It's the expectations of other people is the hardest thing, because they care so much about what you're doing. It's kind of weird. You think, well, why don't you just do your thing and I'm just doing my thing? But no, it's this, hey, there's a kind of silence around what we're doing. And especially when I first gave up, it really used to bug me. Like people would get really quite affronted, and then when you told them that you had not only not drinking tonight, that you were never drinking again, you could see the fear in their eyes, because they were like, what does this say about me? Am I going to have to give up too? Yeah. So it's quite interesting, the social expectation stuff that people carry with them about your drinking. And that's one of the main reasons for the book. And I think it's great that people like Paddy Gower, who's got a massive reach and is basically a pop culture hero in New Zealand, way above what we did similar jobs, but he's got this massive reach and appeal. I think it's really cool that someone like that has come out and gone, oh, I'm off the booze, mate. Because I think what we need is a license to say, hey, it's okay. I can go out with you guys, 3 of us are drinking, I'm not drinking. Who cares what's in your glass and what's in your glass? It's the conversation, it's what we're doing. It's not about what you're drinking. So I think it's really cool that if we can give people a license to think, hey, it's okay, you don't have to drink to be normal and to have a good time and to have a good life in New Zealand. Yeah,
no, absolutely. Absolutely. I wonder if part of it is fear from... I don't know if fear's the right word, but your friends that are still drinking, it's like, oh my God, he's doing so much better than me, and I'm stuck here on this hamster wheel, still drinking. And you wonder if you have this fear that you can't necessarily do it yourself.
Yeah, I think it is that, and I think it's also sort of equate it with a moral thing. And it isn't a moral thing. I'm not judging you by saying I don't drink, I'm a better person than you. I don't feel like that at all.
It's not a sanctimonious
thing.
No,
it's not. Yeah. And I'm not anti-alcohol or anti any other drugs. I'm not it's not a moral thing. This isn't the temperance union. It's not the early 20th century and the temperance movement, which we do talk about, because the history of alcohol in New Zealand is amazing. And the morality thing has played a big part. But this isn't about morality. It's about me saying, alcohol didn't work for me, and I didn't want to do it anymore, and you don't need it to have fun, and you don't need it to have a good life. It's not saying, well, I don't do this, that makes me a better person than you. In fact, I want to take that out of the equation at all and say, don't judge people on that at all.
Yeah, you had some. So we're bouncing all over the place here, but there's some great yarns in the book which I just remembered now, like the Antarctica story, 2006.
Oh, that's a shocker.
Which sounds like the beginning of a joke. Edmund Hillary and Helen Clark walk into a bar. Do you want to tell the story from 2006?
Yeah, they did. And I'm cringing now talking to you about it
like
because
New Zealand
it was unbelievable. Yeah, I mean, we went down with Ed Hillary. It was 2006, so it's the 50th anniversary of Scott Base. Incredible to go down. They went down there on a star lifter or something. I had Ed Hillary. It was horizontal for most of the flight because he's on oxygen. He's 86. Me and the TVNZ cameraman hop off the star lifter first to get the shots of Ed coming back to the ice. His eyebrows are sort of 3 feet thick. He's a legend and he's amazing. His eyes light up when he sees the ice. It's great. We smashed out the work for sort of 3 or 4 nights, did live crosses from Antarctica, which was a big deal in those days. Had the satellite out and all that stuff, and really hit it. And then hit the bar on the last night at Scott Base really hard. And in my defence, it was January, so it was 24 hours light. So, so you couldn't see that it wasn't getting dark outside.
It's like being in a casino.
Filed into it, yeah. And sort of hit the booze really hard, and then sort of ended up, my last steps were like in this common living area where I'd had an utter skinful, and I was still holding a glass of sort of red wine. And when I came it out, and the next morning in walks Helen Clark, Ed Hillary, Jerry Mataparai, the good and great of New Zealand Chief of Defence Force, a legend, the Prime Minister, to see this guy comb it out, absolutely reeking of alcohol. And I can laugh about it now, but I got close-ish to losing my job.
Really?
Well, there were subterranean efforts and emails and reputation managers flying around, and there's a little bit of heat that never got. There was a kind of force shield around me, and it never really got to that. I think you would nowadays, wouldn't you?
Yeah, I was thinking to myself, I don't think you'd survive it now.
No, you wouldn't survive it now. But you see, now, and people did. People did, and far worse things, MPs as well. And that's what we were talking about before, the licence that you're given. I don't know that extends to that now. But interesting, what was my reaction to that? It wasn't like, shit, I've nearly lost my job as political editor. I was like 35. This was my career, like just taking off, really. Massive job, one of the biggest jobs in New Zealand journalism, still is a big job. I didn't go, shit, I better knock this on the head. I just kept going, just kept doing it, and tried to blame someone else. Yeah, I blamed a guy who took a photo of me and put it on the gallery. Why'd you do that? Or there was an excuse. There's always an excuse as a drinker, and I'm a relatively smart person. I had 35 years of excuses. It's this beer. I won't drink craft beer because it's too expensive. They do you? Yeah. It's the kebab on the way home that did you.
The dodgy kebab definitely does play a part. What sort of physical changes have you noticed? I'm guessing it wasn't long before you started noticing a better sleep habits.
That's step one. You cannot. I challenge anyone who's a drinker to say they have good sleeps. More than 2 drinks and I'd be always waking up. So sleep is the utter first one. One of the other massive ones is weight. It just I found you lose quite a lot of weight, and you find it heaps easier to keep off when you're not drinking, because not only because of all the calories in the alcohol, but also it changes the way you eat quite a lot. Well, it did with me. Not only at the time, I'd always eat more. It would be quite nice with this glass of wine. Try this with this beer, but then the next day, your body I would think it would crave the fat, and you would like go after those sorts of meals when you were had drunk the night before. But the immune system too, I found myself getting sick far less without drinking.
Is that right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And actually, and I researched this in the book, and it's not just my theory. Mayo Clinic and others, we source all that stuff in the book, that alcohol has serious impact on the immune system. And I found it I used to get sick quite a bit, like once a month, get a bad cold, or get the flu or something, and it's almost never happened to me in these years. Now, look, some of that will be the COVID lockdowns and all that stuff, but massive impact on my immune system and felt just not getting sick nearly as much.
Oh yeah, the lockdowns. Weren't you bored? Everyone drank more in the lockdown.
Yeah, they did. But no, again, that was like, I think I might have had a flash of a moment where I thought, would this be the trigger? But again, it hasn't been. And so having gone through a pandemic and a divorce and a cyclone, I hate to think what's next. But I'm kind of thinking, I'm clear of this now. And I was thinking, it's interesting because you have these little things in your head, don't you? What say someone gave you a year to live or a week to live? Would you get drunk? And I wouldn't. It's gone, mate. It's
wasting
gone.
some good hours.
It's just gone. It's just gone as a temptation. And it's funny the way the brain works.
How long
like
did that take?
Immediately. That's the weird thing. I just knew that morning, it's just gone. So, which sounds impressive till you think, shit, you overdrank for 35 years. What a moron. So, it depends which way you want to take it. Hey, but it's amazing how something that has been such a massive part of your life, can disappear so quickly, and you can just move on.
How are you coping now with the relatively recent relationship breakup? I've been through a break. Me and my wife, we broke up about 5 years ago.
Is that right?
We're still particularly close now, but I still have moments when I'm running where I feel like regret or guilt and shame that I took her for granted, or I prioritised my work over her, and I look back and I think, I could have worked harder and made that relationship work, and it still plays on my mind. But you seem, are you with relationships like you are with alcohol, where you're good at like drawing a line in the sand, saying that's it, and moving on? I
don't think you can from something like that, eh? And there's no poison or toxic stuff there. We've got a good relationship too, but
it'll just run its course.
It'll run its course. But I'd be lying if I said that I was completely fine with it. It's really tough, and it makes you feel quite vulnerable. And it's a massive shake-up, man. And you sort of have to rebuild your life. And I'm still, as we're talking now, in late February, I'm still a bit shell-shocked by it, thinking, shit, how do I rebuild, and how's this going to look like? Because I never thought that it would happen to me, and I thought that that's how I was going to live out my life with a family. Like I was quite simple in those terms. I had my job and my family. That was pretty much it. That was what I kind of felt. That's how I. That was how it's going to play out. My job, my family, and a Netflix account. And that's kind of what I. That's kind of.
You're a happy man.
Yeah. And now, look, there are exciting bits about that too. Like in that there's unknown stuff out there, and there's adventure out there. But it's hard too, isn't it? Getting off the couch and out of that comfort zone. So it's a little bit frightening, to be honest with you.
Yeah. Well, thanks for sharing that. Did it come as like a shock to you, or was it sort of building?
It's one of those things that in retrospect you piece it all together, and if you piece it all together for someone, they'll be like, yeah, bro, this is why can't you understand this? But I don't know. I suppose I did. You keep thinking, well, it's gonna get better here, or it's gonna get stronger here, or this is just a rough patch. And we had tough times. We both had careers that we were putting a hell of a lot into, and then we had the pandemic and everything. So you kind of go. You do. I think you look for excuses, or not even excuses, just reasons why things aren't firing at the moment, and that it'll be okay. There was an element where it was a bit of a rupture for me.
It's hard though, because people change. People are changing all the time, and I think that's a good thing. But it's hard to change as an individual and then sort of stay together in the same direction as a couple.
I think
it's bloody tough.
I think that's right. And when you look back on it, when you look back in history, for example, like let's say Jane marries John in 1943, he goes off to war. If he survives that, and they're married at the rugby club, and they've got kids, and he dies at 46 or something. That's back in the day, right?
Yeah.
Nowadays, you might live to 100. You've got 4 different careers. She's got 6 different careers and has changed her personality utterly, 3 times. It's just the pressure on people to be everything to each other is massive. You got to be a soulmate, a great co-parent, be entwined in someone else's career, and all of that pressure. I think a lot of times it falls over. So, and your point about personal change, I think while it's really cool that we all have, not all of us, but a lot of us have great opportunities to change and grow in our careers and as people, that puts its own pressure on,
Yeah,
I reckon.
absolutely. It's funny, the couple the fictional couple that you described before, it does sound a lot like my parents. So it was basically an arranged marriage. They're from the same church congregation in Levin. So this was in the 1960s where, you basically lived in your town and that was your lot in life. And now the world's like a one big global community. So
and
there's so many more options, I guess.
And you expect you were happy with that, right?
Yeah.
Or there wasn't really an opportunity outside those walls. Now we're told to pursue everything for ourselves. Right, and that can splinter stuff apart.
Yeah, so you went on Bumble last year. I read about this in the paper. Was that mortifying?
Yeah, it was. It was humiliating.
Yeah,
it was humiliating.
So
single guy joins dating app is not a story. That's the way people meet nowadays in the 2020s.
So you had no part in that. It was in no part in that story.
No,
and you seem like you've been very open with me today, and I really appreciate it. But you're a real private guy. There's not a lot about you online. And I read this Bumble story, and I felt for you.
It was humiliating.
It's humiliating. There is nothing to be ashamed of.
No, there's not. And I'm happy to talk to you about it. And there's nothing wrong at all with being on a dating app. And I've found that in my experience, people who are using them have a lot of integrity. And for people who are still scornful about it, do you think it was better what we did, which was go to a pub, get pissed, and pash someone in the car park? That's how you met people in New Zealand. I mean, actually, it isn't meeting people for coffee dates, which is I don't know. Like, it depends how you conduct yourself. I don't want to go too far into that, but yeah, no, certainly, I'm certainly not ashamed of that. But when someone points it out and it's in the newspaper, that takes on a different hue, doesn't it? And it's like, oh, this guy's in the news. And then, of course, a headline, looking for love or something. And it's just like, as you say, I mean, I've never done the Women's Weekly stories and all that. Not that there's anything wrong with it, but that's just my thing. I haven't done that. I've conducted myself in a certain way. And I'm not a hypocrite. I've not done stories about other people's relationships or personal stuff. I haven't. I've never conducted myself in that way. I
think once you dip your toes in those waters, you sort of open yourself right or wrong to that sort of scrutiny.
You do. And look at my career. Politics, Q&A. You went through some of them. Morning Report. I'm not. I haven't gone after people's personal lives, and so I would. It was a bit confronting for me to have that. But it
is what it is.
It's it is what it is, bro.
When my marriage broke up, I was on Tinder for I think about 30 minutes, and I deleted my account because first of all it felt like a very shallow existence. I'm flipping through photos, judging people based on a 2-second glance, and then it occurred to me that they're doing exactly the same thing, which is awful. But then another thing that occurred to me is if someone gets a screen cap of this and it ends up being a story on Stuff, I'll be mortified. So I deleted the account for that reason, which is probably it's a terrible way to live your life. And fear of what happened to you.
You should have messaged me earlier, mate. Save me the trouble. Say the trouble. Hey, bro, get off this. Yeah.
But so are you dating now? Are you still on any of the apps? How do you find dating as a sober man?
Well, that's interesting, isn't it? Because, again, from a very young age, alcohol was a massive part of meeting anyone. And it is harder, socially harder, in just about all of those circumstances. You get better at it as you go on, but in a society which structures a lot of social time around alcohol, it is harder as a non-drinker. And again, and I've said it a few times in this interview, that's a big reason why I wanted to write this book, to look at why we link those two things so closely, and what it's like to live and socialise without alcohol. But I tell you what, it's pretty real, man. Without it, all the feelings are yours. You think about, Dutch courage, and you talk about that, and you talk about having a few drinks and all that. Well, so it's interesting, isn't it? Well, so what are you running away from? And what are the negative bits about your feelings? Yeah, so you get a bit more fear and a bit more anxiety, but they're your feelings. And so there's a bit of courage in there. And, the relationships you do forge are pretty real, and the feelings you have are real, and they're not brought to you by a brewery.
Yeah, I can imagine it's terrifying in a lot of ways. It's like you go out with someone for the first time, you have 3 wines, and you're probably more likely to think, yeah, now's the moment to go in for a kiss.
Yeah.
Because you've got that Dutch courage. Without any of that, it's like you're making a sound decision based on what you've experienced and what's in front of you.
Yeah, I think that's right. And yeah, socially, especially when you first stop drinking, when you go into, say, a party, it's the first 10 or 15 minutes that's really, really difficult because people really want you to drink, and the host always, out of a good place, right? They want to be a good host. And so you get that real pressure. And if you're standing around a small group of people, say, for example, in a social circle, and they've got everyone else a drink, what are you going to have? And you go, have you got some sparkling water? And it's hard. So you got to come up. You work it out in the end. You work out what your lines are. Some non-drinkers that I know get into the no-lows, the no and low alcohol drinks, or they'll have basically a disguise drink. I haven't really gone down that line, but you do need to sort your story out so that you've got a bit of a comeback, because it's pretty full on. The first gig, and it's in the book, was the 2019 Radio Awards. Now, do you remember the Radio Awards, man? I mean, they
were a good
pretty
night.
booze-soaked day.
Yeah.
And, and everyone comes up from the regions and everyone's right out for it. And, that night was beer and wine were the only choices of drinks. So it's stinking hot, you're sweating like a pig. And that was my first night without drinking, and everyone was just telling war stories in my face. And I thought, man, these are going to be long years. But you get better at it.
I suppose with each challenge, like you're a New Year's Eve baby as well, so New Year's Eve is probably always a big night for you. So I suppose you get through these little milestones and you survive them. And I suppose the most recent one for you has been your relationship breakdown, and you get through that. And I suppose they just build that resilience and that
That's
shell.
absolutely right. You do. You go, okay, well, so here's a Christmas without this part of the family, or here's a Christmas without alcohol, and you learn, you build, and you adapt.
Now, how's your mental health been over the years? Has it been good? You've been through some challenges, eh? You've been through a lot of stuff.
Yeah, I have.
Yeah.
I have. And look, to circle it back to running, it's a big part of it. And I run I try to have 2 days off a week, just to preserve the knees, yeah. But a big part of my mental health I put down to my running.
Yeah.
Big part of it. But also alcohol, they call it anxiety now because it's a dual thing of the chemistry, and I don't understand enough about the chemistry to go into it. But basically, there is a chemical reason it increases the anxiety, and then you hook that up with what exactly did I say last night? And you get that feeling of anxiety, and I used to have that a lot. The greatest thing about not drinking is the lightness of being. You never have that shame. Like we talked before about, it's a bit harder. You're on a date or you're hanging out with mates, and it's a bit harder because you don't have that, that freeing up of the alcohol. But the reward is you never feel ashamed. I hate shame. It's a massive burden. That's the biggest thing. It's just that lightness of being, like never going, I might have stuffed up at work or I might have said the wrong thing, but I own it now. Like, it's never someone else's fault, or I never like that grey zone. What exactly did happen there? And I used to get that. I don't know about you. I used to get that all the time. Just that big weight of shame, and the lightness of being from not drinking is just bloody great.
It's funny you should say that, because I get that as well, and it's never like fear of anything I've said or done, because I go through my phone in the morning and all my interactions on social media when I've been drunk are all positive and nice. But I'll just wake up at 3 or 4 in the morning after a big night and lie awake for a couple of hours with, I don't know if it's a sugar spike or what it is, what the science is behind it, but I'll lie there awake and I'll just be ashamed of myself.
Yeah, I know.
For letting myself down again.
I was exactly the same.
Were you?
Yeah, maybe it was letting myself down. Yeah, in that, there were no, stories about, and then he smashed a window and did something crazy or whatever.
Again.
yeah. Although the teenage years, it might have been a bit of that. But
oh yeah, we can touch upon that if you want. You spent a night in jail, and
I did. Yeah, you read the book closely. I did.
Early 20s, late
Yeah, I
teens.
did. Yeah, I did. I was banned for life from Warner's pub, and I don't think it's still standing after the earthquakes. But
so it truly was a lifetime ban.
Yeah, that's right. And woke up in the police cells. So yeah, I had my moments, especially in my late teens and early 20s. But most of it was like you, hadn't actually done anything really wrong, but just that, I've let myself down. I hadn't actually thought about it like that. I think that's what it maybe a lot of it was. But yeah, it's an awful feeling, eh?
Yeah, it is. It's just, you have, I suppose you have higher standards or a vision of your life, and it feels like you're letting yourself down a little bit. But anyway, I'm speaking as this from a perspective of where I am now, which is still as a drinker. So it seems like I've got some work to do. But your book has definitely made me think about things.
That's cool.
It really has.
That's cool.
I really enjoy it. So it's called The Drinking Game. Who would it give us the elevator pitch? Who would it appeal to?
I think it appealed to just about everyone, in that just about everyone drinks and has relationships with people who do, and it's such a massive part of our life. And this isn't a book about how to stop drinking alcohol. It isn't a book about the evils of alcohol. It's a book about the place of alcohol in our lives and how we got to where we are now. And I hope that people do think about, what is my relationship with alcohol and why do I do what I do? And if you're good with it, keep going. But if it's something that you want to revisit after reading it, then that's cool too. So I've just wanted to take a good look at something that is so woven really deeply into our lives and go, how did we get here?
Are you proud of it?
I am. I'm really proud of it, actually.
Yeah.
I'm really proud of it. It's you were showing me a copy before, and it still take fright a bit because it's something, and I know that you've had 2 or 3 books, isn't it?
Three books. But again, the books with a lot of fart jokes, and basically, it's not going to change the fabric of society like your book.
No, I don't know that it'll do that either. But it's kind of weird, isn't it? Because it exists in your head and then in your computer files for quite a while, and then you're like, oh my god, other people are going to read it. What are you doing with a copy of my book?
Yeah.
But it's exciting as well. So yeah, I'm proud of it, and I'm proud to see it out in the world.
Yeah. So how's the future looking for you? What's the next 5 years, 10 years like, career-wise, personal life? Are you hoping to marry again one day? Too early to say. Probably. I want.
Are
you a romantic?
I am actually.
So
Good guess. I am actually.
Your first relationship that you talked about, the 10 years, 11 years, that you didn't marry. That was
no,
just
we didn't. Yeah.
So you've only been married once.
Yes, that's right. Yeah. And I'm someone who I'm pretty good on my own, but I think it's nice to share stuff with people. So yeah. And journalism wise, I made a decision a number of years ago that I would never go down the management track, that I'm a storyteller and a content provider, and so I'll be telling stories for whoever has me, whether it's merging with TVNZ, that's off the table, or whatever, and whether it's writing or broadcasting, doing radio. I like this setup actually, mate. I might have a chat to you after we get off here and see how you set this up.
Well, babe, I've been going a year, and at this stage, it's about as lucrative as writing a book. So don't quit your day job just yet. But I like it. I like it after having a very long and very successful career in music radio, where it was very restrictive who I could speak to, mainly just like pop singers, to be able to speak to whoever I want and have long form conversations with them. I'm thoroughly enjoying
it's
what
very
I'm doing.
Cool, and I like your branding too. It's very cool.
Thanks very much. Hey, wonderful to meet you.
You too, man. I've enjoyed it. It's been a good korero.
Yeah, I appreciate you being so honest and open as well. And one last thing: who's going to win the election this year?
Look, it's.
Oh, you're going to give us an on the fence answer?
Well, yeah, I am, because we can't tell. It's going to be a really, really close call. I mean, I would have thought it was Nationals to lose before this cyclone, before the leadership transition, which they've handled pretty well. You'd say that the odds are with Labor probably at the moment, but I would say it's going to be a knife edge 05 style election where it's really, really close, and you might get a third party deciding who's going to govern. So yeah, look, it's 50-50, mate. It's too close to call.
Because I don't really follow politics closely enough to have an informed opinion on it, but people I speak to say Luxon's like a bit underwhelming. Like, not much of a performer. Is that right?
He's flailing a bit, but I think you have to realise he was only 18 months in Parliament before he took over as leader, and that is not much of an apprenticeship at all. And, he's doing a lot better than Collins did, and, and they had Muller in between that.
Yeah.
And so they've been a real schmozzle for a while. So he's stabilised it. But yeah, he's plateaued a bit, eh? I mean, it was an Air New Zealand plane. He's sort of plateaued at 30,000 feet.
Do you think he's ready to be mothballed in the desert for a while?
Maybe a bit of that.
And do you share who you vote for, or do you keep that firmly to your chest?
I'll say this much. I'll say a few things because we have been very open and honest today. I didn't vote at all when I was in the press gallery because I thought that, and I did 14, 15 years in the press gallery because I thought that was the easiest way to handle it. I'll just, But I have since then, and I'll say I've voted both sides of the track, left and right, in those days.
You're a swinger.
Yeah.
Don't
circle back to the dating. Don't circle back to the dating apps, mate. We're done with that.
All right, hey, Guyon Espiner, wonderful to meet you, and best of luck with your new book, The Drinking Game.
Cheers, mate.
And best luck for the future as well.
Thanks very much.